در میان نامه‌ای که در 2-3 هفته گذشته از دوستای خود گرفتیم، نامه داشتیم از یکی از بینندگان عزیز ما که حاوی نکات جالب در مورد کارهای فرهنگی در محیط هجرت و شرایط دوری از وطن بود. خیلی کوتاه باید در این باره بگیم که هدف تلویزیون آریانا نیست پیشبرد کار منسجم و آگاهانه فرهنگی در جامعه ماست. البته مشکلات زیادی در ایران وجود داره، اما اگر بخوایم در این راستا کار کنیم باید به این مشکلات فائق آییم، چون که کار فرهنگی همواره کار دشوار و مستدام است. خب بیننده عزیز، بیایید به تماشای برنامه افغانستان شناسی بریم و بعد این صحبت ادامه بدیم.
Salam binandagana Aziz, and thank you for joining me on another week of Discovering Afghanistan. The Herat province is located on the western corner of Afghanistan on the crossroad of the ancient Silk Route. With its temperate climate, it is one of the most ancient cities in Afghanistan and Central Asia. With a very interesting history, the backbone of the culture is of art, architecture, philosophy, poetry, and the love of humanity. Of all the cities in Afghanistan, Herat has the most glorious history. Its strategic location on the edge of the Iranian plateau and the Central Asian plain meant that the city has always been fought over by foreign powers. The history of Herat has been one of repeated destruction and reconstruction. It has been in settlement for over 2,500 years and has been fought over by successive rulers such as Alexander the Great in 330 BC to Ahmad Shah Durrani in 1749. Kings and queens of this dynasty were fond of arts and poetry. With their personal interests in art and literature, hundreds of the best artists, philosophers, poets, writers, and crafters gathered in Herat and presented their magnificent work. This period was coincidental with Renaissance of Europe and is marked as a Renaissance of the East. A miniature is a style of painting that is used all around the world by highly skilled artists. It takes decades to master the technique and can be seen on very famous murals, mosques, and ornaments around the world. This technique originated in Herat. Behzad of Herat, who is known as the best miniature of history, created his work around the 1500s. He trained several students in his lifetime who then became famous and followed his footsteps. The Behzad school, which continues by his students and followers for centuries, is known to be one of the best miniature schools in the world. Khwaja Ansari is a great poet and scholar who lived in the city of Herat between 1006 and 1088. He is the founder of mystical Persian poetry. In the West, this kind of poetry became known by the works of Rumi and Hafiz. His well-known interpretations of the Holy Quran was first of its kind and turned to be the foundation of many Persians' interpretation of the Holy Quran. In recognition of his work, a number of schools, cultural institutes, parks, and even streets are named after Ansari in Afghanistan and in neighboring Iran and in Tajikistan as well. Jami was one of the last and great classic poets in Persian language. He was born in Jam near Herat in 1414 and died in Herat in 1492. He essayed every form of literature and achieved success in each. From childhood, he was welcomed everywhere as a marvel of brilliancy. He was best remembered for his masterpiece of Yusuf and Zulaykha, the story pronounced in the Quran as the most beautiful of stories, a story of Yusuf's curse of beauty, gift of prophecy, and the love of Zulaykha. Layli and Majnun is another beautiful piece of his work, which is compared to our Romeo and Juliet of Shakespeare. 50 years ago, a different and very famous love story surfaced in Herat. A love story surfaced between a Herati girl named Siaimu, meaning black hair, and a local young poet named Jalali. Based on the tribal traditions, Jalali could not marry Siaimu. He then wrote stories of his love in form of several poems. Later, Afghan composers made a song that was sung by Afghan singers named Siaimu and Jalali. Their love also generated another song known all throughout Afghanistan as Biya ke berim ba mazar. The citadel of Herat is a very attractive tourist site. It was built in the 7th to 13th century on the foundation of an older one built originally by Alexander the Great in 4th century BC. The Musalla complex, designed and built in 1417 under Queen Gohar Shah's artistic direction, has been described as the most beautiful example in color and architecture ever devised by man to a glory of his God and himself. The ancient minarets of Herat stand to the north of the Queen's Musalla at around 55 meters in height each and can be seen all throughout Herat. They stood at the four corners of the madrasa built by Sultan Hussein Baqara in 1468 to around 1506, the last of the Timurid rulers in Herat. The Friday Mosque or Masjid Jami of Herat is one of Afghanistan's great architectural gems. The present mosque was established by Qurid Sultan Ghusaddin in the year of 1200 on the grounds of an earlier destroyed mosque. The mosque is covered with very elaborate tile works. Presently, there are many beautiful parks and flowers in the vicinity of Herat that provides a good refuge for the war-torn people of Herat to spend their weekends. Furthermore, each garden has its own season. Takht Safar is one of the most beautiful gardens of Herat. The entire garden is covered with lilies and bushes which bloom in spring. Shadai is another beautiful park where rose gardens are surrounded by tall evergreen trees. It is another place to retrieve in the summer. Bagh-e-Pul Pashtun is the most beautiful garden in Herat at the bank of the Herat River, built in by European styles. This garden has a festival in the summer and at the end of the spring. Today, Herat is one of the most developed and modern cities in Afghanistan. Reconstruction of the city started immediately after the fall of the Taliban regime. Its economy restored fast. Western-style malls, libraries, factories, houses, hospitals, and schools were rebuilt in a short time. The markets are full of fruits, vegetables, carpet sellers, craftsmen, and of course, smiling faces. بینندگان عزیز تلویزیون آریانا, thank you for joining me on this week's of Discovering Afghanistan. If you have any questions or comments, you can email this portion of the show at arianaculture@vivas.org. I'm Sabana Badi'i. Tashakkur and Khudafiz.